Hey guys, welcome to another Monday Night Live with Complete Developer Podcast. Let's go Predators! Representing game 3 tonight. Super excited. So we are drinking. We are drinking tonight. I am going with some Music City Light. It is a Nashville-based beer and a big supporter of the Predators.
And I've got some Blue Pants. How do you pronounce that? Schwarzbier?
Yeah, it's a black lager, basically.
Yeah, and Blue Pants is Madison, Alabama, which is right next to Huntsville. And I started drinking this when we went to DevSpace.
No.
I think. Because that was at one of the bars or something.
Oh, I had their Amber, I believe, the other night.
It's good. I like their stuff.
And that was the game 2 with Colorado. So.
Yeah, and if you didn't notice, Beej's beer actually makes him inordinately tall. Not really. His chair's high for some reason.
And I lower it and lower it. Well, the thing is, I don't know. Like when I lean back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Anyway.
I think I just have more upper body.
Yeah. Okay. So like one of my coworkers is doing this thing, right? It's on video chat. This ruined the morning meeting, right? He gets on there and he goes, "Okay, I can do an okay sign and then flip it up to," and he's like, he can do it like crazy fast, and he's doing that on video, and we all sat there watching him for like 30 seconds. I'm like, why are we watching this crap? Get on with the meeting.
So, apologies to people in other cultures.
Yeah, I know that's offensive.
That
it's
can
not
be
here.
offensive. So, Anyways,
just flip us a bird. It's fine.
So, I'm glad that we're back on Mondays. Completely threw me off last week. I had to go into the office on Monday, and then Will was sick, so we didn't get to record until Thursday. It was a crazy week. So, I am super glad that we are back.
As close to normal as we can ever be.
Hopefully, I will be able to watch the Predators tonight if we get done in time. Game starts at 9, so...
That was a pointed look right there.
Yeah.
Will, if you'll just shut up, watch the Preds.
He wrote the outline, so,
Yeah.
It's game 3. We won the first 2 games. To our listeners out in Colorado, we're coming for you. We're playing in Colorado tonight, so...
Yeah, I figured.
No. Other than that, I've been working on my presentation for Music City Tech. I'm really excited, looking forward to that. So just sort of building it up, adding some more examples and taking some out, just making it more relevant to where I'm at now.
Yeah, so I have been in web hosting purgatory for the last 16 to 18 hours. I was told last Tuesday, my web host was like, okay, we're moving everything to new servers. You're good to go unless you got external DNS. Well, I didn't read the email as closely, and so I didn't realize they were moving servers. I thought they were just moving, their DNS and some of the other things. I didn't realize, hey, you're in a completely different web server. And so I had to move it Sunday night after, 5-6 days of people interacting with the systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was unfun. That wasn't just not fun, it collided with fun, and there was boom and nothing. So we're still trying to get all of it straightened out. So if you go to Developer Launchpad, for instance, you'll see last month's content. That doesn't mean there wasn't content this month. That just means that, Will's a goober. So we're getting it sorted out. The web host guys are, they're figuring out bits and pieces there. We have 5 or 6 sites, 7 that I have to deal with, I think, in this mix. So it's just taking a hot minute. The other thing I'm working on is getting SSL certificates for all of our sites.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, and so I was waiting for them to move to this new interface because I knew it was better than this clunky 2001 style thing that they had before that was all iframes and crazy nasty.
Are you saying 2001 was a clunky year?
Yes, it was.
Just
for the web, absolutely it was. And so they moved, and I was they're saying this, they were moving to this new thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait to get the SSL certificates just because I don't.
They have a link to their MySpace page on there.
They didn't, but every link you click on opens a new window. like it's one of those things you see when there's like real bad state control. So yeah, needless to say, I put it off, right? So I've got to get the SSL certs, and I tried to get one today for one of the sites, and when I hit it with HTTPS, I'm getting the little Chrome warning message that's like, this conversation may not be secure, and it's like, we don't trust.
In that voice too.
Yeah, totally.
Like that's the voice.
That's assistive technology right there,
yeah.
by Chrome. And so I'm trying to figure that crap out, and like I know this stuff, right? But I hate dealing with it. Like I don't, you can ask Beach. I get cranky real fast when I'm dealing with server config.
I know. I was trying to work on stuff last night and kept getting messages.
and I look back over that this morning, and I was like, okay, he was ignoring me. That's what that was, because because it was like a sentence, Beach a sentence, me 3 sentences, Beach 2 words, and it was like there was a zero-sum game, and I was just eating everything. And so like eventually it's like 2 paragraphs, and I'm like, I'm in Hangouts, and I just sent him a 2-paragraph message. I'm going to bed.
Yep.
So it's getting close to fixed. It's annoying. Sorry.
No. So a couple of updates on the podcast. We got some exciting stuff coming up next month. It's not actually a podcast. It's Developer Launchpad. We're going to have a developer from Google come out and speak at our meetup, talk to us about Google Bulletin and how they used how they built it as a progressive web app and used some open source technologies, and then walk us through a couple of things. It's going to be really exciting. We're both looking forward to it, hoping to learn a few things. I know that our group that comes out every month is going to learn some stuff too, so it's going to be really awesome. Also, we have some really fun guests coming on the show. Looking forward to some of them we've recorded, some of them have yet to record, so we got some really cool things coming down the line.
Some of them need to get a hold of us about the recording.
Yeah.
I know they're listening, so
that's true.
Twist that one in there right there.
Not going to, and speaking of that, we are preparing to order some new swag for conferences this year.
Yep.
Actually, as soon as we get off here before we record, I've compiled a list of potentials for us to go through, so we're going to be doing a little bit of that over some beer, and well, that's how we pick the swag we get. It's based on beer and price, so
yeah. So,
do you want to announce it, or you want me to? We're doing something a little bit different.
Oh yeah, I don't know why I looked at that and I was like, "What are you talking about? What do you want?" It's not on the outline. It doesn't exist.
Good point.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about putting it on the outline. We're doing something a little bit different.
Clearly, you should have.
Yeah, I should have. Instead of, I guess this falls under podcast live update. Instead of doing our news stories like we do, we've decided to answer some more listener questions. We've gotten some feedback from people that they like the questions better than the news.
We like writing the questions better than the news because it's a question, not...
Well, yeah, for now.
Yeah.
But
and I say we because it's usually you.
Anyways, we're going to try, give this a go with answering a couple more questions and skipping and not doing a news story unless there's something really important or really big going on that we want to talk about. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you think of that. We'll do it for a couple of weeks and check the feedback, see what y'all say. If you guys come back and be like, hey, we'd rather have the news stories, then we'll change. But I feel like this is going to be a good direction to go.
Yeah. So our first question is, what is it that Linux can do that Windows can't? Yeah, this is a bit of a loaded question because you're going to have like screaming mobs of fanboys from either side. I noticed you didn't include Apple in there because those fanboys scream louder than anyone's. I would say that there's not. There's probably some small thin slivers at either end that one does and the other one doesn't. Mm-hmm. Most of the capabilities are fairly comparable. Linux tends to be much more configurable than Windows. If you enjoy configuring your system and tweaking things, that may be your jam. Windows tries to do it all out of the box, and by all out of the box, I mean gigabytes and gigabytes of all come out of that box.
My goodness.
So it's, I would say that it's not so much about what Linux can do that Windows can't. Like if you're at the point where you're at a specialized application that'll only run on one versus the other, you probably know that. It's more about how it fits your personality, how much tinkering and stuff that you want to do, and how much tweaking you want to do.
I know a lot of people like to use Linux for gaming and stuff because they can optimize their system better for that. Yeah. Though Windows does have better drivers.
Yeah, I didn't have real good luck gaming on Linux, but I've got 2 video cards in my box because I'm driving a 4-monitor setup. If I had it to do over again, I would get one really, really good card and drive a 4K TV.
I'm sorry, dude. I just had this mental image of you sitting at your desk. And do you remember, I forget which show it was, but the show where they had the guy with they like put a lawnmower engine and like basically built a go-kart on top of a recliner.
Yeah.
And I had this mental image of your desk driving down the road.
Yeah, because I think that was a large part of my problem was drivers. Actually, I know it was. I was having a lot of page tearing and a lot of crashes. Like I could open Firefox, and if I tried to drag a tab off of Firefox, it would crash the desktop environment, like completely, like hard crash it, and you had to log back in. So there was some funky stuff that I couldn't quite get hammered out. I think if I was simplified enough where I had just a single video card, that probably wouldn't be a thing. And honestly, I've considered going to Linux pretty much every year or two since about 2001.
Well, I did Linux for a while. I had a dual boot, and then I did solo Linux on the crap top before we started using Reaper. We were still using Audacity. Is that the right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I liked it. I was perfectly happy with it. My mom uses Linux. My mom is
She was more than a little happy with that.
Yeah, it's funny because my mom is not a technology person. She's, a nurse, been doing that for like 30 some odd years. And when her Windows XP laptop was giving her problems, I installed Ubuntu on it for her and kind of was starting to show her how to use it, and she started doing stuff. She's like, "Oh, this is like the computers we had when I started nursing," and just went at it.
Yeah.
And so she loves it, and I'm like, "Go."
I think the thing is Windows has had a lot of criticism about security, and they're really clamping down. Like that's why Windows Update is as much of a pain as it is right now, is they are responding to the security scenarios that are going on. Linux gets a lot of flack about usability and about the setup difficulty. And so that seems to be the big thing that they're working on. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, really, really good desktop Linux at the level where I would use it and be comfortable using it for all my stuff here fairly soon. Basically just waiting on JetBrains Rider to get a little bit better and for me to get all of my existing stuff off of the Windows code base. And then I can do whatever I need to.
So we have a corollary here. And I made a weird face. It's a little bit of a delay here.
Your parents made a weird face for you, actually.
Well, yeah, there's that. So, apparently I make weird faces when I read. I apologize, guys. So I'm going to do my best to pronounce this Chaniqua Cole. I hope I pronounced your name right. Says on Facebook, "I'm new to your podcast. What is a good virtual machine for Windows?" So I don't know if you mean a good virtual machine to run Windows on or a good virtual machine to run on Windows.
Yeah. VMware has got a free player. That's probably your simplest bet. You can also use VirtualBox. Again,
use that too.
Yeah, that's open source.
And there's one that starts with a B. I'm sorry, I don't know this very well, but some of our developers at work use Macs, and like one of our API developers uses a Mac.
And my brain is not firing on what that's called. But Beej will look it up on his phone because, but yeah, I would just think you could get by pretty much with VMware. To be honest, like if you're at the point, by the time you get to the point where you're pushing what the VM software can do,
Boot Camp. That's what
Okay.
what she uses. So yeah.
Yeah, by the time you're pushing what the VM software can handle, you're probably at a point where you're comfortable evaluating other options.
No.
Versus like right now, if you're just starting out, I would just get VMware. They make it really really easy, and there's a lot of tutorial material out there. And this is a big company that's interested in people picking up their platform as well. So you get a lot of a lot of available material. So that's where I would probably go. If you are running in a Linux environment, VirtualBox does a pretty good job. Also, I've used both. I tend to prefer VirtualBox because I tend to be, if I'm having to put something in a VM, a lot of times it tends to be Windows in a VM on a Linux environment, not the other way around. It's been a while, obviously, since I've had to use a VM, but I did that a fair bit when I had the Linux box here.
So thank you for that question. That was really good. Good discussion too. I like that. So our next one. What is some poorly written code you've wrote when you were beginning to learn programming?
All of it.
So
every bit of it.
Do you remember? There's two things I think of because you made me do vanilla JavaScript. I wasn't even allowed to use jQuery, guys. That's how mean he was.
Yep, that was a jerk.
Yeah, he was. So do you remember I wrote that one thing? It was
The font preview thing.
Yes.
Yes. I do remember that.
And it was not that it was poorly. Well, it was not that it was bad code, but it could have been written a lot better with jQuery.
Yeah, and it could have, honestly, you probably could have tightened it up quite a bit in vanilla JavaScript too, right? Like you've got to have those early experiences are really important for learning what not to do. And there's really only one way to do that is to touch the electric fence for yourself.
Of course, I will say this: the first few months, I should take this. Let me take that back. It was after I'd been there about 8, maybe 9 months. I had to go back and make some changes to some code that was written the first few months that I was at my current job.
I like how you didn't use first person there. It was written. It just was there, man.
Well, there's a reason for that because I go back and I look at the code, and my very first thought was, oh, this must have been. We had an API developer that, I don't really want to say resume-driven development because she was trying to do it to learn. Not so much to build a resume, but just to learn the modern stuff because she'd been you know, working in older stuff for so long. But she really great with SQL, pretty good with web forms, was trying to learn Angular and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, my first thought when I saw that code was, oh, this must have been when she was trying to learn some stuff, and we had a little extra time, so we let her build some things, and we worked with her. And then I looked at who checked it in.
Yep.
And it was me. Yeah.
Yep, been there, done that. I have, oh, wow. Okay, so my coding stuff goes back a really, really long way. And so I just, it's hard to come up with a single example because, 6 months on, everything is crap. Like you look back at it and you're like, why did I do that? Because you have the benefit of hindsight at that point, and the benefit of learning for 6 months on whatever you happen to be doing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've gone back and looked at code that I wrote 5-6 months ago.
Yeah,
and I've gone, why did I do it that way? And then I realized, I'm like, oh well, I've learned these 10 new things since then. So I always like to pad myself a little bit so I can. If I have to go back into working with something that was written a while back,
yeah,
so I can get it up to date so that all of my code in a single code base looks familiar.
Yeah, you don't want a lava flow pattern on your changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got stuff at my current job that I look back on and I'm like, that was not really all that well done. Some of it was not understanding the business domain or understanding how our databases are huge, and so. There's plenty of code that's terrible from that perspective. I try to have pretty clean algorithms and clean code as far as single responsibility principle, those kind of things. But you screw up every so often. It just happens. So I would say that any code that's old enough probably has somebody that hates it.
All right, guys, we have another comment from the same person. I really hope I'm not pronouncing your name right, Chaniqua. So let me know if I am. Oh, and Josh Kilgore joined us. Hey, Josh. So she says, I've taken a couple of ethical hacking boot camp courses via Udemy. Can I get employed without the certs? You know what? I'm going to address this because I have not got any certs and I got employed. It's based more, I would think, on what you can show that you've done.
Yeah.
Your GitHub repo, your experiences. If you can get an internship, that would be great. If not, jump in on some open source stuff and make some contributions. Go to, like we run a group here in Nashville, but go around to different groups, especially in the areas you want to get involved in. I know when I was first starting out, I was going to the .NET user group a lot more than I am now, and about as much as I probably should now.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up with it, and that's bad on me. But yeah, you can totally get employed without certs or a degree. It may take a little bit longer. I know it took me about 8 months.
And you have to market yourself better. That's the other side of it. Like a lot of times, the certs and the degree make it easier to get your resume past, an HR screen. But if you're blogging and you're out there in the community and people know who you are, and you can show them, hey, I've got the chops for this, that'll go a long way. So, yeah, you can totally get by, with ethical hacking, I think. If without the certs, the certs will help though.
They will. The other thing is, you can always get the certs after you get your first job, and work with recruiters. Now that's what I did. The first job that I had was started off as a consultant and then got hired on full time. But I worked with several different recruiters, made some friends out of it, and actually like that. I think that's what I got most was the friendships. I got the job, but I also made friends with the recruiters and hang out with them and stuff. So that's really cool too.
What?
You get the next question?
Yeah, sorry, I had to. Okay, so the next question is, how do you explain to non-programmers how exhausting programming is? My first answer to this is that you don't. Question scenarios where you feel the need to explain yourself. Typically, if you're an adult human being and you're making a living, you don't need to be explaining yourself. Like that's a weak negotiating position, and so I feel like that can kind of be a sort of an uncomfortable default that people go to. Like they go, okay, well, this makes me really uncomfortable. Instead of having the conversation and going, Beach, you're making me uncomfortable with the way that you're treating me when I've been coding all day, right? Like instead of having that conversation, they try to explain how it's exhausting, and so they try to do metaphor and they try to do all this other stuff. It's like, look, here's how you feel. Have the conversation. Don't try to put this in some other box. Now that said, sometimes you do have to explain it, right? Like you have somebody that's asking legitimately, okay, why are like you're getting a project manager's talking to you and they're like, why are all the developers so stressed out? Why do they seem like they're so tired at the end of the day? If that's the conversation and it's not about you and you're just trying to explain to somebody, now you go to analogy.
Or you may have a child who is like, I don't understand why you're so tired. You've been just sitting all day.
Yeah.
And you have to explain it to them, or
yeah, you kind of do, but
I say you have to, but it would be good to explain it to them, and
yeah, it's
so that they understand that just because you're not physically doing something, you can be mentally exhausted. One thing that I like to do is tell people, especially if it's someone that I know is not very good with math or doesn't like math, say, imagine sitting in an Algebra 2 class all day long.
Yeah. And talking about algebra at lunch with your coworkers, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
and then going, hey, I've got to get home and I've got to train for Algebra 2.5.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty reasonable way to explain it. As far as the tiredness and as far as like the mental exhaustion. But I did want to point out that thing at the beginning there. Try to avoid situations where you feel the need to explain yourself, because that's something we do way too much of. I've cleaned up a lot of code written by developers who spent a lot of time explaining to management what they were doing, and they're like, "Oh, I've got to refactor this," and they talk to they'll talk to the CEO about why they have to refactor something, and you're sitting there going, "Dude, they're paying you a 6-figure salary as some kind of specialist, somebody that knows what they're doing, and you're going to the CEO and explaining the minutia." I mean, like, can you imagine an accountant going, "Well, this $10 transaction really should properly be in this account, this GL segment, instead of this other one." Like, if you do that to a CEO, you're going to destroy their confidence in you. Don't do that.
Something fell off the table.
Yeah. So don't justify yourself, I guess,
Right.
is the thing I would go for.
So guys, let us know in the comments if you like this new format. If you have any more questions for us, leave those in the comments, or you can email us at, for now, neckbeards@CompleteDeveloperPodcast.com. We may be coming up with a question email.
Yeah, like I said, I'm in I'm in web hosting purgatory at the moment. So when I get out,
Yeah, eventually we will have one specifically for asking questions. So if you haven't already checked it out, go listen to our most recent episode, the 7-layer burrito of networking. Just kidding. It's the 7 layers of networking. Open Systems Interconnection, OSI, model is a conceptual framework that defines how to implement network protocols. It was developed by the International Standards Organization, or ISO, alphabet soup.
and it's the OSI model put together by the ISO.
Yeah.
Does
stew on
ISO have a CIO?
Probably, yes. No, well, they're in a standards organization, so probably not.
That's unfortunate.
But it was developed in order to standardize communication functions. The goal is for interoperability of different systems through a standard protocol. Now, what the model does is it breaks down network communication into 3 upper and 4 lower layers. Each layer is a set of protocols for communicating to other devices at that level, also known as peers. These layers do a specific job and then pass the data to the next layer up or down, depending on the direction of the flow. The lower layers are concerned with moving data around, whereas the upper layers are concerned with how the data is used by an application. In the episode, we look at what each level does, starting at the bottom and working our way up. For each level, we discuss what the protocols at that layer define and provide some other associated definitions. This is only an introduction to the topic of networking layers. There's a lot to it. These are difficult and deep concepts that we just scratched the surface on in the episode.
And our episode this week is unit testing and test-driven development. And unit testing is a very valuable skill to have no matter where your code runs or what it does. It reduces the error rate of your software and can often help force a better structure into your code when other things can't. We brought on John Calloway and Clayton Hunt to answer our questions about unit testing and test-driven development. We met John at DevSpace in Huntsville last year, where I started drinking this beer. And he's a Microsoft MVP, and he's been a professional developer since 1999. He's focused primarily on web technologies and has experience with everything from PHP to C# to React.js to SignalR. Clayton has been programming professionally since 2005, doing mostly web development with an emphasis on JavaScript and C#. And they are basically 2/3 of the trio that hosts the Six Figure Developer Podcast, and they run the stpete.net meetup.
So, interestingly enough, we just recorded with them right before doing this live. So, coming up next week, I believe, we will be on the Six Figure Developer Podcast.
Yes. And they both, they recently released a book called Practical Test-Driven Development Using C#7. Unleash the power of TDD by implementing real-world examples under .NET environment and JavaScript. That is a mouthful. The book looks really interesting. My copy's on the way. It isn't here yet. Thanks, Amazon. But I'm looking forward to it because I think that this will be good for the junior developer that I work with and also for me.
The episode was really great. I learned a lot from it. Also, just enjoy talking to and hanging out with those guys. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, there's we get people on the podcast a lot of times. It's like, man, we could sit and talk to them for like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
It would all be information packed, but then he'd have to edit it.
I know,
and then he'd get even.
Well, yeah, there is that. Like after recording with them and John Ash, their third co-host on Six Figure Developer, we sat on for about 15-20 minutes and just sort of chatted about running meetup groups and editing and podcasting and developing. So it's really fun, something that we enjoy doing. This whole podcast and stuff has introduced us to a lot of really awesome people. So guys, we're going to wrap it up, jump off here and get on to some recording and planning on what swag we're going to have for Music City Tech. Check that out. You can get tickets for it at completedeveloper.musiccitytech.com. So we'll talk to you guys later.